Record. There we go. All right, episode 001
Let's do this.
of the Young Repubs. Okay, this is Mike Black and Ben Bessendorfer here. Ben, do you want to kind of kick us off and yeah,
Sure.
introduce
Yeah.
yourself?
So, like Mike said, I'm Ben, 28 years old. We met through the Army, through the National Guard, and decided that we need to make a difference. We're up and comers as far as the political stuff goes. Neither of us have really been old enough to even run for politics until now, and so we're excited to hop on this train and see if we can make a change for you as Americans.
Yep, hence the Young Repubs, Young Republicans tag. So, okay, so I was thinking about this all day about because we need like a good intro, right? And like a good intro, whatever. And I was thinking about all like things here and there. And where is it? I created a little intro demo. Let's see. I want you to listen. My wife listened to it. She thought it was ridiculous, but I want to see what you think.
Okay, let's hear this.
Okay. Let me turn up my volume. There we go. Okay, you ready? Let's go.
They're kind of young, but really, they're just angry. And yet, they're reasonable Republicans.
And then bam, that's when I'm like, what up, Young Repub crew?
That's right. The angry Young Repubs. We're tired of seeing our country get torn to pieces.
Oh man. I don't know. What do you think?
I like it.
Okay. I can clean it up, but that's a demo of what we could possibly do.
Exactly. It's a demo. We'll clean it up. We'll get something good for these guys.
But I had a lot of fun with that. My wife thought it was ridiculous, but okay. So I kind of created a video and I'm gonna post on Facebook kind of the podcast and that we're starting our first podcast. And we're talking about term limits and voting integrity. That's kind of what was on the docket. And so, I don't know, term limits. What are your thoughts on this idea of term limits?
I think there's so much that goes into the term limits. But at the same time, I think something needs to be established for any elected official to have a term limit. I think Supreme Court, where it's appointed, is a little bit different. They didn't necessarily have or even want that desire to get in that position in the first place, where they're selected by the president of the United States to get put in that position. I think it shows a little bit more integrity as far as that actual appointed position. But elected officials, I mean, you look at Congress right now and how many of them have been in office for 15 years or longer. There's a good majority of them that have been in that position for way too long, where they're no longer speaking for the people that they represented. They might be speaking for the people they represented when they got elected the first time, but things have changed. Times are changing. And I think politics, or as far as elected officials, should also change.
I agree, but there are even these Republicans or politicians that the second they get elected in the office, they go outside of what the people want. Like Liz Cheney, I don't know if you've been following what's been going on with her. This is her first time in office, and man, she just completely disappointed her voting pool, and they're wanting. This is her first time in elected office, federal elected office. I don't know anything else about her background, but it's just the brashness of these politicians that feel like they don't represent the people. The people, they use the people to get into office, and then it feels like they just go off and do whatever they want. They run their own agendas, and they're not.
I agree 100%.
And so, like, okay, I'm going to challenge this idea, though, because it's not a very foreign idea of term limits. It's been brought up here and there, and it's always seems to be shot down. But I've kind of had the thought of, could there be some unintended consequences with giving elected officials term limits? Because does that put us at a disadvantage with countries like China and Russia, whose leaders are there indefinitely, and so they can think long term because they are there long term, whereas we are kind of on this cycle of just every 4 years, every 6 years, every 2 years. It's just kind of a hard reset. Do you think that kind of puts us at a disadvantage? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I understand your question for sure. If we look back to when they originally wrote the Constitution and set up the elected parties as far as Congress goes, there's a reason they did it staggered for the 6 years of senators. And it's so there's your senior senator from each state who, by the time the next senator either remains in office or is removed from office because of the election, that junior senator now should have a better understanding, more qualifications, and they can become the senior. But then it also goes to why we do that and going with what the people want, because you look at, right now, any type of dictator, who knows if their people like them? It doesn't matter because they have all the powers. So we can't really look at some of these other countries as far as Russia, China, North Korea, because it doesn't matter what the people want. If they don't agree with what the dictator says or the Communist Party leader says, they're just put into some type of camp or killed. And if we had that established here in America where the president is in term indefinitely, I think that same type of thing would start to happen. They would feel like they have that much power for that reason. And it's because they do have nobody that can remove them from office at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I don't agree. Obviously, I don't agree with it, but that's just something that, I think that also comes down to just like the two-party system then at this point, to where that is what creates this constant reset of policy, reset and undoing what the previous administration is doing. That's the whole point of Joe Biden's like a bajillion executive orders that he's been signing, is basically to try to undo what the previous administration did. And so I think it would be less of an issue of having term limits because of that. Unless, okay, let me reset. It'd be less of an issue because we could think more long term as a country if we all got on the same freaking page, because we're not. We are definitely not on the same page anywhere,
which is a huge issue.
Major issue. And I think that might be the bigger issue than, I don't know. It just might be creating a bigger issue than.
No, I agree with you. This divide we have with the two-party system is, to me, a bigger issue, and creating in the next 4 years, the next 8 years, the next 10 years, a even larger issue than term limits. But I think the term limit might be a start to the solution of the two-party system. Maybe not getting rid of the two-party system, but getting rid of that divide between the two-party system. Yeah, because you're getting you have your old politicians, Republican or Democrat, and they bring in a new I don't even know what you want to call it, a new member of Congress. I'm trying to think of good examples. We'll just go off. We're Republican, and most of our political points go more conservative. So I would agree we're Republican. But so we'll take Nancy Pelosi and AOC. You have someone who's been in there for 100 years. Okay, not really. You can fact check me all you want because I know I'm wrong on that. It hasn't been 100 years, 47 years. Okay, close enough. She looks like she's been in there for 150.
Oh, He might have been.
But you take someone who's been in there for 47 years and you get a brand new politician who they're going to look to is going to be the more senior advisor in whatever political party. But if that political advisor is already scorned towards the other party, as soon as you get a new representative in there, it's just like high school, just like drama in high school.
That's what did you listen to Tulsi Gabbard's interview with, maybe it was Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin or something, but she was like, it was exactly like that when she walked in. She's like, everyone had their little cliques. You had the old timers, and
Yeah, that was the Joe. That was her interview with Joe Rogan.
okay, yeah, and she was like, it was just like high school. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like that one song, high school never ends. It just never ends, and it's so sad that something so juvenile can rule people's lives.
Exactly. But then to me, that's what's creating the issue, because anytime you see it, you'll see Nancy Pelosi and AOC's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You'll see her name and Nancy Pelosi's name on the same bill, the same impeachment letter, the same whatever. She probably had no idea. Well, we know she had no idea what any of this meant before she got elected into office. And then she gets in, and all of a sudden, everything she does sides with Pelosi, and Pelosi's the ringleader. But if we could get rid of that amount of time, then these older congressmen, women, are not going to have enough time to sway those newcomers to where now everything they do is completely one-sided. So we could mix or change the whole playing field to where everything is more equal, if you want to call it equal.
Yeah, because I honestly think the reason we have the two-party system is because, for the most part, most of the ideas that drive America can be separated out into liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican ideas, which are not bad. They're not bad to have this divisiveness and this contention within the political system. Conservatives want to keep and hold on to what we've been working on, and which is fine, but sometimes we do it a little too much. And then liberals want to change and improve, but which is great and fine, but sometimes they want to do it too much. And so I think as a whole, we kind of naturally divide into those two parties, but it is so divisive right now, and it's not even comical at this point, because we could used to be able to crack jokes and everything. It's not even comical. It's very violent. It's violent at times. And so, yeah, maybe like just clearing house, resetting the political system, not the system. That sounds super revolutionary, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with the whole overthrow of the government at all.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that.
I was not going for that.
But something needs to be established, whether it's term limits or some type of evaluation on this political leader, to where if they're not making, I don't even know where to begin. It would be a tough call. Who would even make the evaluation? Because we already know it's not the people, because they've been in for 47 years, but you look at the place they live, or the country they're living in, and nothing's making a difference. Nothing's changing. So where do we even begin? But term limits, really. That's kind of, to me, that's where we would need to start to actually make a change, or get enough people who go libertarian or the Green Party or completely independent, to where they make it into office, and we can just kind of throw them in here or there, to where it's not so 50-50. I don't think we can have 50-50, because then nothing really gets done.
Yeah. The issue with that, though, from what I understand, is because we don't have a parliamentary form of government where every sort of political party has a representation. It's all kind of an all winner takes all sort of deal. But having more people in there with different ideas would definitely shake things up for the better, I think, to where we can get newer ideas. We can get these old timers, and man, we see it all the time in every organization. These old timers, they're just so set in their ways. set in how they want to, how they think things should get done, which is fine to an extent, but sometimes you gotta clean house. You gotta just rotate the dirt in the garden, you know?
Right.
So do you think that that term limit should apply like across the board to um, government agencies and branches of government like the CIA directors, the FBI directors, and or just for elected offices? Because there is that there is also that the idea that these people within these appointed positions are there for life, and that is kind of our form of a totalitarian government and kind of like a Chinese Russia thing, because they are in there for life unless something happens, unless
Right. I would say keep it to the elected officials, because most of those appointed positions, they're not in there long enough to even bring up the issue to those different departments. I mean, look at the FBI. I think there was two different heads of the FBI while Trump was in office, so it's constantly rotating, and so I don't think it becomes as much of an issue. Maybe if it ever got to the point to where the head of the CIA or the head of the FBI was in there for 30 years, then maybe. But most of the time, they've got to start from the bottom anyway. So technically, they'd already have been part of the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, Department of Defense for 30 years before they even make it to that position. So they're probably planning on retiring as is. So I don't think most of the appointed positions really even become an issue, except maybe the Supreme Court, where they're in there until they die or they're no longer fit to perform their duties.
That would be a good. I think we should go into more detail about that, because I think there is also a difference between the appointed positions, like the presidential cabinet, and then the lifelong career people within those departments. I think there is a difference, but that would be an interesting thing to kind of flesh out. But yeah, I agree with like the cabinet. I guess that is true, because they do kind of just rotate as quickly or
more quickly.
Yeah, or more quickly. So interesting. Okay. Then okay. So along with that divide, it's clear that especially what happened on January 6th, was that the day? The whole
for the Capitol riots?
Yeah, the insurrection, quote unquote. That
the erection.
Yeah, that does show that it's like we are divided in the fact that like what led up to that moment, right? It was all these questions about the election led up to the moment. We took it to the courts denied, and we took it to like every single court that we could, all the way up to the Supreme Court, and none of them ruled, really, especially the Supreme Court. They didn't rule, they just ignored it. And so it feels like people aren't being listened to, and it just led to this tension about the whole voting integrity of our country. Like, what are your thoughts on that, on the whole voting integrity and the election process?
I mean, I think the way the election process works, if it's done properly, is the way it should be. Electoral college, popular vote, and then appointment. And if we went towards more of what happened this last year, actually, Dan Crenshaw, if you go listen to, it wouldn't be his most recent. I'd have to go back and look at what podcast it was, but he talks about this, and he talks about how if we went straight to an only a popular vote, to where us, the people, are the only ones that have a matter in it, we would see a lot more rioting, a lot more pitchforks and torches coming down the road towards the Capitol or towards the White House.
Yeah.
Because we're already seeing that with this divide, but we still have the Electoral College in place, where the way it works is as soon as the Electoral Colleges are set to be official by the governor of each state,
Mhm.
then that's what goes. And this is the first time we've ever really seen it battled or taken to court in depth. And I think the only way to solve that is we stay with an electoral college, electoral vote, but in person only. None of this online mail-in bullcrap. In person with voter ID, voter registration is the only way to properly do it, and that's how it should be.
Okay. And that's yeah, I have a hard time with the mail-in. It's super convenient, right? And that's kind of what was sold, especially, and that's where I think the whole coronavirus thing was blown way out of proportion. And they were thinking long term with this mail-in ballot that it was the perfect excuse to really push forward an unprecedented amount of mail-in ballots. And there's so much, there's so many like gaps in that process because one, it's new, it's newer. Two, it was on the biggest scale that we've ever had. And three, the post office, like they're not equipped for something like that, and all sorts of other issues with that. That it was the perfect, it was the perfect failure in my mind for that kind of a voting system. But kind of going back with the electoral college, this is one thing I really hate with what people say is a threat to our democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic with democratic functions. And that's what it is. That is what the electoral college is. Because if we did have a pure democratic society, like you were saying, like Dan Crenshaw was saying, we would, it's mob rule. That's the definition of a democracy, of a pure democracy, is mob rule. The majority has the rule, and that's not representative by all people in the population. And so if we did get rid of the electoral college, then yeah, mob rule, pitchforks, and worse than what we've already seen. It's been pretty bad too.
Well, and I think the starting problem is people think the only vote that matters is for the president. You've got to start on a local level. It starts in your state. It does not start with the country. Your senators, your House of Representatives inside your local state jurisdictions, districts, that's where the voting actually matters because they're the ones that determine the electoral vote.
Yeah. And the electorates, I think that was a huge educational thing for everyone, is when with Arizona, and I think Arizona specifically, is really understanding what electorates were. And electorates are actual people that they can go with the popular vote of their county, of their whatever district, or they can just vote however they want. Like
Right.
what an electorate is, you elect these people hoping that they're going to represent you.
That's why you elect them, is your hope
Yeah.
that they're going to go with you as the people, not for their own political or personal gain.
Yeah. And that's, again, that reinforces that we are a constitutional republic and not a democracy. And did you hear that one guy that, I can't remember where it was, he couldn't recite the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah, I just heard about that today. I don't know where it was either, but baffles my mind.
He got hung up on the "and to the republic for which it stands," and to the republic for which he got hung up on that one portion. I'm like, that's because everyone's fed this bullshit that we're a pure democracy. And we're not. We're not. And we shouldn't be, because that's not representative of people, of all people.
Right.
So
that would make, it'd make more sense if you messed up on the Pledge of Allegiance now, because they're no longer, mandating that in your schools. So maybe if you were 8 years old and in 20 years you were going to recite it, you wouldn't know what it is. But this is an older individual, and he couldn't recite it himself, or themselves, trying to remain gender neutral here.
A woman, my friend, a woman. Frick. All right. Did you have any other questions? Anything else you wanted to talk about?
I mean, one of the biggest things right now that's going on with this with the House is HR 127.
Oh my gosh.
I want to hear your thoughts on 127.
Oh, it is the most. It is the criminal's wet dream to have something like this, to where they know exactly who has what guns, what kind of guns, where they are, and then on the whole fact that people are, I, I, I don't know, like I'm stuck between more, maybe a more in-depth psychological evaluation for people, but when you start expanding that psychological evaluation to like ex-spouses and ex, like any sort of person you've associated with, I'm like, where does it end? Where does the whole evaluation end? I don't think, I think that's the idea, is it's a never ending pipeline of people that they can evaluate and see if they can, until they find someone that, like, oh, you knew this person in third grade and now they're a pedophile and a serial killer, and even though that's the only time you had an association with them, you can't have a gun because of that. Like, I think it just expands the possibilities of prohibiting people from having firearms.
Well, like you said, I think that's what they're going for. That's why they threw the ex-spouse in there, is because they're pretty sure the ex-spouse isn't going to say something decent or pleasant about the person trying to get a gun.
What ex-spouse is not disgruntled to an extent? Like, why are they are ex-spoused? But
Blows my mind, baffles my mind that it's even brought up. I don't know if you read my post that I did the other day, and I might get, we might get censored off the internet because I'm saying this, but
our email already got like blocked for some reason. And
yeah, I tried making 2 posts on the Young Repubs, and they blocked 2 of them. I had to change some hashtags for them to actually send it through. So
it's ridiculous. But
but no, so
Instagram, right?
yeah. So you this post I put, right? So you look at it and you think about history, which is one reason we might get censored, is because I'm bringing up history and we don't talk about history
Yeah, shame on
because the way it works. And then the other reason we might get censored is because I'm bringing up the word Nazi. Okay, so you go back to World War II, 1933 to 1938. They started implementing and establishing rules that the Jews had to follow. And one of these in 1938 was the rule or the law that all Jewish individuals had to record and document to then pass on to the government their property and their property value. That way, whenever the Nazis decided they wanted to raid whatever town these Jews were living in, they knew how much the town was worth and if it was even worth going into to raid, or if it was just one that they wanted to drive a few tanks in and blow the place up. And it's that same type of thing. We're starting with these small laws. You might not think it's a bad idea now to have a little bit stricter gun control, but it is. But you might not think it's a bad idea. But then where are we going to be in 6 years from now? Just like Nazi Germany, when everybody was completely documented, nobody was allowed to have their guns, nobody was allowed to protect themselves, and their freedom of speech was taken away, freedom of press, freedom of religion. The Fourth Amendment here in America, the Nazis, if they wanted to go in and steal their milk, if they wanted to go in and see what they had inside their house, they had all the right to do so. We have all these protections and guides in place, written in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, to protect us from all of these things that I've just laid out. And slowly our government is trying to take these away. And it starts one small law at a time until they can get enough passed to where we can no longer do anything about it, and we've become a communist country.
So quick. And it's amazing how, like, the Bill of Rights, the order that they are in is like the order of importance. They're all important, but the first thing they say is religion, speech, press. We have already seen a limitation on religion here with this COVID-19. I don't think any church should have shut their doors at all. I don't care. Synagogues, like nothing. Press is obvious. That's a freaking obvious one.
We don't even go there.
Oh, and then speech, that's kind of a newfound one with this cancel culture and just the censoring and everything. And then
there's another reason we might get canceled.
Yeah, exactly. Post this on YouTube. Great. But and then it goes straight to guns. Like, that's number 2. That's a Second Amendment, because if they start doing that, Amendment 2 is supposed to help protect those, and then all the other ones that, and it's just it blows my mind. it's that whole concept of, what is it, like weak men create bad times create strong men create good times create weak men. It's just we're in this cycle, and we've had it so easy lately, so easy, which is good to an extent, but we've forgotten a lot of the lessons that those hard times have taught people. And I think it's so interesting. So I'm part Chinese, and my ancestors left China like forever ago for a reason, because of what it was becoming. And one of the first things communist China did was they prohibited the practice and use of martial arts. That was their equivalency of the Second Amendment. They prohibited kung fu. They prohibited all these forms of kung fu, and made it out. They outlawed it. Why? Because it empowered the people to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. That was their version of the Second Amendment. And now look at that country. Like,
Weird.
I know, right? It's like
I said, history repeats itself.
And it blows my mind. It's like, yes, we have guns, but until, I don't know.
It's just sad that in this day and age we can allow history to repeat itself.
We allow it. That's a yes.
That's why I emphasize the word allow. We allow it to happen. You can literally go back through on your computer and probably find documents from 1776 that have been scanned and uploaded. Well, we know we can because the Constitution's on there. Weird, right? You can find documents older than that, but let's just start with our country. From 1776, you can find documents that outline why our government is established the way it's governed. And then Civil War happens, and it's the exact same thing. We've, like you said, we've had it good.
We had it really good.
Up until now.
Yeah. I think 9/11 was the closest that our generation has had, but of like how bad it can get. And that was a really cool time for the country in the unity aspect, because I think we were all on the same page. But we've already forgotten what that did. And then let's not even get to the whole Patriot Act and how they're trying to basically rebrand that into everything. But oh boy.
When you can have someone that lives in America and say that the worst threat to America is not terrorists, it's not ISIS, but it's the police officers that protect and serve you while you walk into the Capitol building, there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is playing off the media, playing off the agenda of black versus white.
And that's yeah.
And that's where our divide is biggest or largest right now, is the different movements we have. I agree. People need to be treated equal, and that's why our country was established. And people don't see it that way because the color of their skin, we have to look at them different. That's wrong. Completely wrong, completely false. And how people in leadership roles in Congress who are African American can say that African Americans are just as oppressed, or they can say that whatever origin, whatever you want to call it, how any of them are oppressed. But we have people in Congress who have become the vice president of the United States in all of these different racial diversities in the highest powers of our government, and we're still trying to claim oppression. I don't know. It blows my mind. Blows it completely out of the water.
That's kind of why I'm reading this book called Cynical Theories by James Lindsay and I can't remember the chick that wrote it with them. But they went into this huge, basically a thesis about the social justice and postmodernism and the critical theories that started in the 1970s, had an origin before that, but really kind of launched in the 1960s, 1970s, and the hippie movement. And it just blows my mind. That's the long-term game that these people have been playing, is in implementing all these slow little things that, yeah, initially I agree that a lot of people, we need to treat people correctly, and yeah, just the common sense things, but it's just taken to the extreme to where now we got to pay reparations and blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh my gosh, like yeah, We should talk about that one day. The critical theories. That'll be a fun one.
We'll leave that for like episode 3 or 4.
We won't that because I'm like I love talking about that stuff. I hate it, but I love it. But cool.
Division needs to stop and unity needs to grow stronger.
Well,
not unity of a movement. Unity of we as the people of the United States needs to grow.
Well, it blows my mind of what people consider unity too. It's like unity is basically do what I say, or this is how it's being branded and marketed, is do what I say, or that's not unifying. I'm like, no, that is called an abusive relationship. I don't know if I did that with my wife, she would be pretty pissed. And yeah,
like be this close to jail.
Exactly. This, I'm like, it's give and take on both sides, but that's not how it's being marketed. It's being it's being marketed as that, but that's not how it's being implemented. Is fall in line or else. And that's where I have the problem with the term unity and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's not what it is right now. It's very oppressive. But
yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts? We'll ask this really quick. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter and Antifa still rioting in DC?
They're still rioting in DC?
Yeah, you did not hear about that?
I did not hear about that. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, as of February 6th, there were still riots going on, or hold on, peaceful protests happening in Washington, DC.
Well, yeah, BLM Incorporated, that is just, and that's they've weaponized language to the extreme to where Black Lives Matter, a very agreeable term, a very agreeable concept. Yes, Black Lives Matter. They have weaponized it in such a way that if you disagree with the incorporation, you therefore disagree with Black Lives Mattering. It is like we were just watching Monsters University the other day, and they were doing one of the bad guys. They were doing a fundraiser for charity, making fun of the heroes in Mike Wazowski and his little crew. They're making a charity off of making fun of them. And Mike Wazowski's you got to stop doing this because it's not fun. He's like, you want us to stop making money for charity? And like, that's the same kind of concept. Like, oh my gosh, it's a very agreeable term, but they weaponized it and utilized it to where I don't agree with BLM Incorporated. It's a very Marxist organization. I highly doubt anyone that wants socialism has actually sat down and read the Communist Manifesto and actually knows how chaotic and revolutionary, not in the good sense, but the bad sense of tear down and rule from the ashes, that manifesto is.
Well, we saw how good it worked in Seattle. So
yeah, with Chaz or Chops or whatever they changed it
both.
to.
Yeah, who knows?
Which that's an irony in itself. They're so anti-fascist that they hate guns and hate walls. What's the first thing they do? They create
establish walls and have guns
to guard the walls. I'm like, if that is not a case study in itself of how hypocritical these organizations are, I don't know what is. But I did not hear that they are still writing. That does not surprise me.
And yeah, I haven't looked into it today, but as of February 6th was the last time. So 2 days ago, they were still out there in the streets.
That's sad. That is not reported, but all these other things are. These mostly peaceful protests and standing in front of a burning building, that just blows my mind. Blows my mind. But
something will happen. One day.
One day. Cool. So I guess should we wrap this up? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, sure. No. I mean, unless you have any other questions, comments, concerns.
No, I think we hit some pretty divisive topics. Maybe not in the most coherent manner, but I think we got some good ideas on the ground. And so for everyone listening, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and locals.com, all at Young Repubs or the Young Repubs. And yeah, please feel free to comment and question and add respectfully to the conversation and community. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Where the freak is the pause button there?